what help we can provide in being able to get some justice. Now, if the Ombudsman in some way can also try and look at the matter, I'm not sure whether what power they might have on that, because quite often the Ombudsman will refer to the Medical Council, but the Medical Council can refer back to the Ombudsman, as I recall the legislation. So it's quite a reasonable link to be able to take. And one would hope that no other community is going to be hit with this kind of poor process, I think, as it affects any other rural GP. So yes, it's about the North East, yes, it's about Dr McGinity, but it's also about process. And I think we owe it to everyone in rural Tasmania to be able to make sure that process is right, and hopefully get Dr McGinity back. Yes.
Thank you for those words, Sue.
I give you Kim Booth.
Okay, well, tonight, I've come here tonight to support every one of you here tonight in the Scottsdale community, and of course the McGinity family and Dr Paul McGinity, who have been subjected to the most outrageous bureaucratic interference in the delivery of a yeoman service over 33 years to this community. Personally, I'm totally appalled by what's happening. I just can't understand that the government would allow such disruption to occur to the health services, to the primary health services of a rural community like Scottsdale and Derby and Bridport, etc., to take away a doctor who, the only thing I've ever heard about Dr Paul McGinity is the incredible service that he's given. The fact that he is a genuine person, a human being who's prepared to go beyond the limits, to work late at night, to come out in any weather or conditions to tend to the patients and absolutely follow his Hippocratic oath. It is just appalling, and I can't accept that this the rarefied atmosphere of this drone's castle of the Medical Council has simply, by a stroke of a biro and a fax machine, written off the career and the medical services to an entire community in this fashion. I just cannot accept it. I don't accept it, and I won't. Hopefully tonight, well, it will be, it's the night that Scottsdale's roared and demanded their doctor back. And to me, that is the bottom line. That's what I've made a commitment to you as a community, and my fellow parliamentary colleagues in the Tasmanian Greens as well are absolutely committed to see Dr McGinity back in the community. And the people of Scottsdale, the North East, are provided with the service that you deserve. I mean, the reasons that have been given to me are just fatuous in the extreme. I cannot believe that you would actually sack somebody for working more than 8 hours. I mean, tell me, is there one person here in a rural community who doesn't work more than 8 hours a day? I mean, it's just a joke. It seems like they've transferred this kind of city mentality into a country area. It just doesn't work. People who live in the community, in rural communities, are different type of people. They work all sorts of different hours. We're not, prescribed in our behaviour to the degree that the Medical Council is expecting Dr McGinity to work, and it is completely unacceptable in my view. And you will never be able to transfer to the country services based on a 40-hour week, based on the rostered days off, based on no overtime, based on being mentored, all this nonsense that they're requiring this man, because all I've ever heard is that this man has given fantastic service to this community, and he deserves to be reinstated, and we will help and assist and do everything we possibly can to make sure that Paul McGinity is restored here. We have written I wrote to the Ombudsman immediately the meeting that you had on the Friday, on the Monday, requesting a review of the circumstances of Dr Paul McGinity's dismissal or a suspension from his medical practice. And the Ombudsman has written back and said that because it is a Supreme Court matter at the moment, it's now sub judice and he can't comment at this point in time. But I would encourage every single one of you to make your voices heard loud and clear, to ring up talkback radio, to write to the papers, to ring the Premier, to ring the Premier's office and inundate him with phone calls and say this is just not acceptable. You are the government, you have to step in, it is your responsibility to make sure that we have the services restored back to our community before an incident occurs that everybody's going to regret. Thank you very much. We are in Parliament next week. We will try and, by motion and question if possible, put as much pressure as we can in Parliament, and Sue's already made that commitment on behalf of the Liberals. We will be putting as much pressure as we can, but you as a community need to continue to do exactly what you're doing. It's unfortunate you have to come out at night like tonight to stand up for your community, but maybe that's what we need to do to make sure that these services are restored. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Our next speaker is Brian Kahn, as Kevin previously stated, a past chairman of the board of LGH before they messed with that, and also as a patient of Dr McGinity's. So Brian has seen it from the top down and the bottom up, depending on the condition.
Thank you. Can you all hear me down the back? How's that? Can you hear me now?
Yes, that's right.
Frank Abraham, turn your hearing aid on. If it wasn't for Paul McGinity, Rex Lethwood could have you. Look, this is the reason why I'm here tonight is to, and if you might have to give me a little bit of extension of time, we've got to go into the historics of this. Is that Paul resigned in January of last year due to the untenable situation he was placed with at the North Eastern Soldiers Memorial Hospital, and he rightly did that in the best interests of all concerned. He then appealed back in June to turn around and have his clinical privileges reinstated, and then there was a hearing on the 7th of August, which I attended with him, to turn around and have his clinical privileges reinstated. Now this is rather serious in this situation. They keep on saying that Paul needs a rest and they must have a rest. They don't understand rural practice. They don't want to understand rural practice. Now despite that, Paul told them that he was taking a holiday. He went away and he was away overseas for a fortnight and came back. After that, on the 4th of September, two members of the Clinical Privileges Committee met with Paul and myself here in Scottsdale. And we spoke about what he wanted to do and what he was prepared to do. And out of that came that they offered Paul restricted privileges back at the Soldiers Memorial Hospital. Restricted privileges, so he could treat somebody with palliative care, but if somebody had pneumonia, he couldn't treat them. Now, how ridiculous is that? So, in the Clinical Privileges Act, under the Health Act of Sue would know, of 1997, he had a right of appeal to the Secretary of Health in Hobart, and there could be a minimum of 4 and a maximum of 8 that could sit on that committee. After that, they turned around and there was a revision within the department. How many revisions have we had in the health department, Sue? And Kim and Tanya would know. Then Dr Birchall was appointed. And Dr Birchall turned around and she mustn't have been happy with the Clinical Privileges Committee, because she then referred it to a doctor outside this state and a clinical nurse educator outside the state. Then the terms of reference for that were laid down, and I believe there were 3 terms of reference. That report wasn't handed down to Paul